Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to Craven County's meeting for December 16th. If you have any instruments that have to be put on silent ring, I would appreciate it.
You got yours.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Booker,
Here.
Commissioner Liner,
Here.
Commissioner McCabe, Commissioner Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Sampson, Vice Chairman Jones,
Here.
Chairman Mark.
Here, we have a quorum. First thing is the agenda.
No, you won't do the pledge.
Yeah, we'll do the,
Pledge and the prayer.
yeah, we'll do that first. If you would stand for the pledge and the prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we thank you for yet another year of the wonderful blessings you have showered on us. We pray that as we enter 2020, you will bless this Board of Commissioners with unity, creativity, and the American spirit that has made our country and county great. We pray especially for the next generation who will inherit the works of this Board of Commissioners. May you bless this board with heartfelt concern for the world they will live in, a world of peace, justice, and in all of the God who created us. Amen.
Amen.
On the agenda, we have a change. After juvenile crime, we have Highway 1764, Mark Finlinson, 4A. Also, the Commissioners' Appointment Board, I handed out a new one. Do I have a motion to, are there any other corrections to the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion? The ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay, the ayes have it. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of December the 2nd, tax releases and refunds, and K-9 donation budget amendment. A motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? No discussion, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Liner,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones,
Yes.
Chairman Mark.
Yes. At this time, I want to take chairman's privilege, and I would ask Mr. Liner to stand up. You know, he followed me as chairman, and we followed a lady by the name of Florence. And Florence left a lot of destruction in Craven County, in fact, over 5,000 homes. And it also left a lot of destruction in our own buildings. And he had quite a job to steer this commission and the staff in redoing some of the damage that was done. We had a convention center that was pretty much wiped out, which now is open in October. We had the emergency service elevator that right now we still have to go through the courthouse or behind the Methodist church to get into because of some destruction there. We had problems with the school board, which you steered us through. And we had some problems with recycling. We changed that around a little bit. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of a better person to have steered us during that period of time in 2019. And it's an honor and privilege to present, if I can find it. present this plaque to you, and with sincere feelings on my part and all the commissioners, we want you to have this.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Board effort.
Okay. Commissioners' appointments, you have the appointments in front of you. Any thing that you feel might want to be changed there? I spoke to each one of you on the phone, and I think you're all in agreement with your appointments. I'd like a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Juvenile crime prevention. Jennifer Dacey.
Good morning, Chairman Mark, Vice Chairman Jones, Board of Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. You have a budget amendment in front of you from the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. And this amendment basically includes an additional $41,860 that is coming through the county from the state, does not require any state or any county match. This money came about because of the Raise the Age legislation, which became effective December 1 of this year. And as you'll recall, that raised the age for juveniles to 18 in the state of North Carolina, the last state in the union to do that. And because of that change and the additional numbers that we're going to have in our juvenile system, the legislature promised at the time that they made the change with Raise the Age that they would have additional resources coming into the juvenile system to help our juvenile kids, and in an effort to continue the long-running decline in juvenile delinquency that we've had in the state of North Carolina. So with that said, the money, the budget process this year was a little different in our state. So we were notified, I believe in October, that we would have this money available. And so they wanted us to spend it in this fiscal year. So we met with our Risk and Needs Committee, looked at our data for our county involving all the risks and needs of our juvenile population, and then put out an RFP, as we typically do in January, for the remainder of this fiscal year. And we prioritized three things after looking at all the risks and needs data. We wanted programs that included mentoring services for the 16 and 17-year-old population, interpersonal skill building and social skills, and then vocational skills. And we had several different nonprofits respond, but there was only one program that responded and met all of those requirements. And that was the program that I'm bringing to you today, and it was put forward by the community college, the Volt Center, and they've partnered with the Methodist Home, which has a long history in North Carolina of providing services to juveniles throughout the state. They manage a transitional home for juveniles here in Craven County, and they provide services throughout the state. So this partnership, I think, is a fantastic one. I think if you all approve this today, this program will be, to our knowledge, our understanding from the Department of Public Safety, it'll be the first of its kind in the state. We're excited about it because, as you all know, this particular segment of the juvenile population is not required to stay in school. The law has not changed in that regard. They don't have to stay in school till they're 18. And many of them do like to have money. Greg Singleton and I have talked about this. Gen Z, they like their cash. And so one of the exciting things about this program is that it will introduce kids who have come in contact with the juvenile justice system to a way of educating themselves, getting certificates and various core curriculum, forklift training, electricians, HVAC, different certificates that they can leave the Volt Center with a skill that is marketable, and hopefully they will have an idea of what they can envision themselves doing in a positive way in this community, rather than doing some things that we don't want to see them engaging in and increasing delinquency. So that's the goal of the program, and we're really excited about it. Basically, what it will do is they're going to specifically provide training in National Center for Construction Education and Research Levels 1 and 2, and areas of carpentry, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, or welding. And the folks from the college are here today with us, Robin Matthews and Jeff Schultz. If you'd like to ask them specific questions about how the program's going to work. But I know you all will be touring the Volt Center later in January. JCPC will have our meeting there in January. And how this is gonna actually work is there will be a staff person through this program who will meet with parents and kids when they're referred by our court counselors. Robert Keeter is here today, from our court counselor's office. And kids who are DJJ referred will have priority in the program, but also kids who are perhaps referred by DSS or by a school resource officer will be available for this, will be able to get in on this program as well. So we're excited about it as an option, and are hoping that even though we have a sort of short window of time to get it up and running, that the college has the marketing ability to help us get the word out about it so that it can be utilized by our juveniles in this time period. And since Raise the Age is just coming into effect, we're not really sure what those numbers are going to be like. The department projected those numbers, but we don't really know how they're going to play out. So we'll see how many kids utilize it in the remainder of this fiscal year, and then look going forward at what might be a good fit. So any questions or?
Well, let's have a motion first.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Yes, sir?
Stacy, what's gonna be your max load? I mean, we know we don't know how many yet, but what's gonna be your capacity? What are you gonna be able to handle?
Well, yeah, they have estimated 20 at this point.
Is that in each trade group or for the whole course?
That's for the entire course, and obviously with these trades, a lot of resources have to go into the actual supplies that are used in the training as well, so we have some salary built in there, and for the staff person who will be involved in meeting with the families and getting these kids engaged. The great thing is that the Volt Center does not have courses that begin at a quarter or, at certain periods. They have sort of a rolling schedule, which is great for this population because as soon as they're interested, we want to try and get them in there. We want them to see what's happening and what the options are available to them. And so there is some training that Robin can speak to that they will be able to get them in very quickly to do.
If I may follow up on that?
Yes.
Sheriff, this may be for you. Since we've taken the age up to 18, how many, say, in the past year have we had 16 and 17 years olds incarcerated or sent away to?
Chairman, or Commissioner, I don't know the number, quite offhand. I know our projections were that the numbers, we felt like were probably gonna double, because we had to take that into consideration with our budget moving forward, because that's gonna mean many more transports for us to either Greenville or Wilmington, if they can take them, if not, maybe further away. So I don't know, but the numbers are gonna be substantial.
Do you want to try and answer that, Robert?
Commissioner Booker?
Go ahead.
We're trying to prepare, we're getting transportation teams to help the sheriff's department. The actual numbers we don't know, but we still continue right now. If a juvenile commits a crime at 15, they may not finish their probation until even 16 or 17. But we do feel this is a great fit for the county. It's, like you said, as far as we know, it's a one, it's nowhere else going to be presented in the state. It's opportunities for these juveniles to get good job skills. And for the 6-month period, we feel this is going to be a good test to come to you next year to determine how many maybe overall.
Oh, no, I think the program's outstanding. Don't get me wrong on that. I think it's great. I just see a larger influx that the sheriff's put forward and what we've got capabilities for probably right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Booker.
Is there anything, that all sounds great, and I agree. I like what I hear. One of my frustrations over the last 20, 30 years is how we didn't have programs to train people to do the jobs that we need to have done.
Right.
And the kid that doesn't want to go to college just had nothing. And so now, these kids that have gotten into trouble, my question then is there anything, is this voluntary for them? They can still choose to say, I don't want to do that, right?
Correct,
So it isn't something that it's mandatory that they go into.
correct,
Although I couldn't understand why they wouldn't want to.
right.
Is there anything that you see in this that you see negative? Anything?
Not from our perspective. As a council, we thought it was the best option. I think based on my experience with the Reentry Council, which you all know a lot about what that organization has done, I sort of view this as the front end of that process, right? I mean, our goal should be to try and get kids, when we have an opportunity, to find a productive way of contributing and supporting themselves. And I think this is the best way to do that. Would it be nice if we had it available to kids who maybe weren't DJJ involved? Yes, but.
Yeah, understand. I guess, well, one good thing I've seen in the last couple of years is as an employer and as somebody who has, I have a lot of friends who are employers, the shortage of people to do the jobs has caused, I think, all of us to take a second look and say, hey, let's give these people who have made a mistake, maybe didn't have the right training or mentoring as they grew up, let's give them an opportunity to redirect their lives into something positive. And as a result, I think we've got a lot of people today working that 10 years ago would have been walking the streets.
Right.
So that's the good news. So this is just one more step toward that.
Right, I agree. And I think the exciting thing is that the folks at the Volt Center have already had experience dealing with folks who've come through the boot camp, job readiness boot camp that the Reentry Council and the college are putting together. And so their experience with that population, everybody knows what kind of kids we're going to be dealing with. And I think there is going to be a good opportunity for mentorship in that environment.
Thank
So.
you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. A question, and I wanted to clarify something to make sure that I understood this one. After the students go through their level 1 and 2 training, does this program also include a dedicated effort to place them with employers? Because if you're 17 and you've not hunted for a job before, that is an intimidating process, and that is a point where the whole thing will break down. So my first question is there going to be job placement assistance available? And the second, okay, we'll
Why
go.
don't you speak to that?
Yes.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Schultz, and to answer your question, yes, we do actually actively have employers coming to speak to the class. So both daytime and nighttime classes, these employers are hungry for employees. There will be plenty of opportunities for that. We're not advertised as a job placement agency, though, but there is opportunities for them. And just to echo Commissioner Booker's comment too about, the students, giving them an opportunity, though. We just had in our last manufacturing trades class, a student who was faced with a tough decision, whether he goes back to crime to actually put food on the table, but then we prevented that and presented him with an opportunity here with this manufacturing trades class. And because of that, he clearly stated to all of us, and Vice President Gary Boucher too, you gave me an opportunity and I chose that path, and now he's gainfully employed, and it's been that for over a month now.
It
So
is.
we're making these dreams come true for them, we're making positive effects for all of us.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add too, that we can work with the Flex program, the
Yep.
HRD,
Right.
the resume writing, things like that they're gonna need at 17, because that is, you're right, it's an overwhelming task to some of
It
them.
is.
To write a resume. How do I conduct myself when I go to be interviewed? How do I dress? So we can use that program as well, so we intend to tie it all together to hopefully give these individuals an opportunity. And as Jeff said, we've had, back, this morning, I had a gentleman call Friday that they install electrical appliances in buildings. They need electricians and plumbers. So they reached out to us, and we'll be providing names, let him come, talk to the class, see who he may like. So I think there's ample opportunity. You know, we can't guarantee it, of course,
Right, right.
but we'll try to.
You're
get
going to
them
try to
into
connect the
jobs.
two pieces.
Yes.
with it. And my other question is, to make sure I understand this, since this is new, we haven't done this before, we don't know how many people are going to be interested in this and not. To a degree, this is, I will call it a pilot program, where at the end of it, you will figure out we need more resources because we had more people involved, or we
Right.
need to add to this end of it. So the first time around is the pilot program, and then you will refine exactly what you need.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The main thing is we have a program now.
That's right.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Liner,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones.
Yes.
Chairman Martin.
Yes. Thank you. Mark Finlinson, Highway 17 and 64 Transportation Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delighted to be here, and happy holidays to you. I'm going to make sure I can work this thing. Yeah, here we go. All right. I am always pleased to be back in front of the Craven County Board of Commissioners. Craven County has been the leader of this enterprise since we formalized it in 2006. So I'm glad to be here because we have a lot to celebrate. We also have some challenges we need to address too, so I'll speak to both of those. First of all, several of you attended this event, the grand opening of the four-lane divided highway in Jones County. It was outstanding. It was well attended. It was decades in the making, and I tell the story about going before the Jones County Board of Commissioners, I think December of 2006, when this was still conceptual. And Commissioner Sandra Riggs down in Jones County said to me, "This has never happened, and it's never going to happen, and I don't care what you do." And I said, "Well, Commissioner, I feel strongly that it will. So when it does, I'm going to come down and you and I are going to drive on it." So I owe Commissioner Riggs that drive, and I told her so at the ribbon cutting. So thanks to those of you who attended. It was a great event, and I hope you've had a chance to drive on it. I did this weekend, and it was a breeze now to get to Jacksonville. I wanted to just bring to your attention generally what has happened since 2006 along the entire corridor, which, as you know, is Brunswick County in the south all the way to Camden County in the north, about 300 miles of US 17. DOT has invested over $2 billion since that time in 19 projects, of which about $650 million had been what the department calls unfunded on the STIP, or in the out years beyond the 10-year strategic plan. That was our primary challenge when we started this effort, was to get the department, and by extension the General Assembly who appropriates the money, to invest in projects, move them up on the timeline, and get them built. So we think that's pretty significant in the 13 or 14 years we've been at this. Now, specific to Craven County, since that time, about $146.5 million has been invested in 4 projects. If you break them out, the Newbern Bypass was about $40 million. Mill Street to Antioch Road in Bridgeton, the 4-lane improvements there, about $28 million. Those are both completed and open the programmed dollars for Antioch Road up to NC 43 north of Bridgeton, and then US 43 up to Sproultown Road on the way to Vanceboro. Those are about $78 million in program commitments that are considered deliverable by NCDOT on the STIP. So we're excited about that. There's been a lot of investment in Craven County, which makes sense. These are some of the segments that have opened since 2006 to traffic, and I won't go through the whole list of them, but the most recent ones, of course, are in Jones County and the bypasses around Pollocksville and Maysville. The Craven County references are to New Bern Bypass Southern Leg and Mill Street to Antioch Road in Bridgeton. Now, currently on the 2018 to 2027 STIP, which is the last one that was approved by the Department of Transportation, there are 51 US 17 projects listed worth about $2 billion. 39 of those are considered either partially or fully deliverable, which means that either the right-of-way or some of the construction occurs in the first 5 years of the 10-year plan. In addition, and we'll speak to 64 later, but there are 7 US 64 projects. This represents the most projects that have ever been on a STIP in our corridor. Now, the department is working, and the planners, including the RPOs and MPOs, are working on the 2019, or the 2020 to 2029 STIP, the next 2-year STIP. And so that's where some of the challenges occur, and we'll speak to those. The reference was made earlier by Chairman Mark to Hurricane Florence. Obviously a huge event, not only impactful in Craven County and among the residents here, but also to the department and the transportation infrastructure all over eastern North Carolina. DOT faced about $300 million in immediate remediation costs associated with the storm. Now, they'll get reimbursed by FEMA for some of that, but it takes time to go through the federal bureaucratic process. And best case scenario, they'll be reimbursed about 70–75% of what they've invested. So there's still a state requirement to come up with funds. So they, as a result of the storm, they had an immediate cash flow problem, and then they have a longer term budget problem. Now, what I would say to you is, over the historical past, the last couple of decades, annual storm-related costs, hurricanes, ice storms, so forth, about $67 million to the department. The last several years, starting with Matthew and through Florence, the average has been about $225 million a year. So a significant increase in storm-related costs, which the department is having to deal with. Now, they also lost a lawsuit over a state law called the MAP Act. The MAP Act was passed decades ago, and it allowed the department to identify parcels of private property along future corridors and basically encumber those pieces of private property, not allowing the owners to develop, sell, or otherwise do with what they wanted to. A lot of private property owners, as you can imagine, didn't like that, took the department to court, took the state to court, and won. So the department was then asked immediately to either acquire parcels or release them from any encumbrance, allowing the landowner to do what they wanted to do. So the department had to spend about $200 million immediately to acquire some of the most crucial parcels of land. So that also kind of put them behind the 8 ball. So those things have caused not only an immediate impact to maintenance and operation budget, that affects things like drainage of ditches, mowing the grass along the roads, those kinds of annual operations. But more than that, affected the long-term capital budgets. And until they can get the budget right with additional money, we've seen delays in some of the projects that are important to us, which I'll speak to now, particularly those in Craven County. This is the northern part of the Bridgeton project, Antioch Road up to Warehouser Road. It's about a $60 million project. It's budgeted, therefore it's deliverable, it's programmed. Right-of-way begins in 2020. Construction had been scheduled to begin in 2022. As a result of the budget issues, it's been pushed back to 2024. We'll speak to how we get around that in a minute. But that's the first one. Second one is NC 43 up to Sproultown Road. That's about an $18 million project. It's the first segment of 5 that will eventually get us from Warehouser Road up to Chocowinity. That also is scheduled for right-of-way in 2020 and construction in 2024. It's the department's intention to let those projects together so that basically the contractor is building from Antioch Road north of Bridgeton up to almost the Vanceboro bypass. So that will be helpful from a logistics standpoint, and I think from a cost standpoint. The rest of the segments from approximately the Vanceboro bypass up to Chocowinity are as yet unfunded. But the good news was, by the department programming the first segment, which is NC 43 up to Sproultown, you can do the entire environmental document for the entire R2513 project, which means that the permits will be in place when we find the money to do the rest of the segments up to Chocowinity. So that's good news. One other item about this route, which I think is important. This is going to be the best alternative route to get from New Bern to Greenville on a 4-lane road. The 3 alternatives are US 70 to NC 11 and 13 at Kinston, NC 43 directly from here through Vanceboro to Greenville that way, and north on 17 to US 264. This is the only one that really has anything programmed. NC 43 is a distant dream. It has many environmental challenges that we would have to deal with. And as far as Kinston to Greenville is concerned, the bypass they're going to build around Kinston goes on the wrong side of town, doesn't connect north of Kinston into 11. So they have more challenges than we do here, so I think it's in our interest to push this project so that we have a 4-lane, safer, more mobile route between New Bern and Greenville. The Jones County bypass, while it's not technically in Craven County, I think is going to be hugely important for Craven County because it will create a safe and mobile corridor between here and Jacksonville. I think because there's now a 4-lane divided facility in Jones County, economic growth will occur there and it'll accrue to the benefit of Craven and Onslow. So I'm very confident that we'll see not only safer travel, better mobility, but also economic growth as a result of that. I mentioned quickly a couple of other projects in the corridor in eastern North Carolina that we've been working on. Hampstead Bypass, about $350 million, give or take. The northern segment right-of-way is ongoing. Construction begins in 2021. This will eventually tie into Military Cutoff Extension in Wilmington, and we'll be able to get you either to the bypass around Wilmington if you're heading south to Brunswick County or South Carolina, or get you into town if you're going to downtown Wilmington much more quickly. The R2511 project, which is between Washington and Williamston, is underway right now for right-of-way. It's about $85 million construction in 2021. That's the last 10 miles of 2-lane north of Washington. Once that's done, then you'll be able to go all the way to Hampton Roads on a 4-lane road north of Washington. And finally, I-87 as a future interstate. This was part of the FAST Act, which was the Federal Highway Act, passed about 5 years ago. Governor McCrory signed the state laws designating the future I-87 and dedicated the sign in 2016. Both feasibility studies are completed, both for the part that's US 64 from Raleigh to Williamston and the part that's US 17 from Williamston to Hampton Roads. There is only one interstate upgrade project currently funded, and it's not deliverable, but it is on the books anyhow, and that's the improvements of the existing 4-lane divided from approximately Elizabeth City to the Virginia state line. But as a result of the future interstate designation, our organization reached out to our friends along the US 64 corridor and said, we need your help to make sure we get this interstate built to interstate standards in a timely fashion. And so Nash County and Edgecombe County came on board and embraced our work. And as a result, gave us an additional highway division. So now 1, 2, 3, and 4 highway divisions in eastern North Carolina are part of our group. We picked up an extra congressional seat. We picked up a handful of state legislative seats. So our federal and our state advocacy was boosted by the extra help. And really, the heart of the matter is, what are we going to be working on next year? We're going to help DOT and the legislature try to find short-term funding solutions to get the department over the hump. We're going to support the planning, continue to support the planning efforts of our RPOs and MPOs and their prioritization process through SPOT. We're going to continue to seek long-term sustainable funding for transportation. And as chairman of NCGO, I am instrumental in that. I go with the department around the state, drum up support for long-term sustainable funding, and specifically the work of the NC First Commission, which is a state commission appointed to recommend ideas about long-term funding to the General Assembly when it reconvenes in 2021. So we will continue to be at that table. I think it's very beneficial for Highway 17 that we have that kind of access to the department, and will continue to be their valued partner. I would encourage you, if you can attend next January in Raleigh, there will be the second annual North Carolina Transportation Summit. I believe the dates are the 9th and 10th. It's a great event. Last year, there were about 1,000 transportation professionals from all over the country that attended. NCGO was co-host of the event with the department, so I was privileged to stand on the stage with Secretary Trogdon and Governor Cooper to welcome those folks to Raleigh. We talked a lot about the disruptive technologies that are changing not only how we use transportation, but how we're going to pay for it in the future. So if you can attend, I think you'll find it very interesting and worth your time. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my remarks. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Are those dates again, Mark?
9th and 10th. I'll confirm
January?
that. Yes, sir. Let me confirm that. No, I'm glad I checked. Wednesday the 8th and Thursday the 9th of January, 8th and 9th.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question. Having sit on the RPO and being briefed on that one, it looks like until funding does become available, they're talking now the finish up of 17, even the first and second portions of that. It's a three-phase deal, I think, up there on that one. They're talking 2026 and possibly 2028 before funding even becomes available.
I think that 2026 to 8 is more likely the date whereby it would be open and drivable. My idea is, right now, funding is scheduled according to the draft STIP in 2024, or construction would begin. I'm optimistic that we can get that accelerated and get it done prior to that, but it's going to take 3 years, generally speaking,
Well,
to build out the project.
again, based on what we got last month, they were saying it got postponed out before they even start construction until 2026. So, and they say that could be further. My concern is if we're going that far out, I guess, I don't see it, maybe you can tell me, how many people, or how many organizations, or how many municipalities are still in the original group for Highway 17?
Hard to answer because we've added so many more since the time we
Well,
started.
that was 64, but I think what he's asking is.
No,
the
no, I
ones
mean,
originally
to say,
17.
the original group was generally just Onslow, Jones, Craven, Beaufort, and Martin, I guess. And so after that, we added others, including Pender, including Bertie, including Chowan, including Perquimans and Pasquotank. And then pretty much all the municipalities within those counties were part of it one time or another. And that's not counting the 64. This year, for example, Perquimans County came back after having been gone for about 6 years, and New Hanover County joined for the very first time. So that meant that once we had New Hanover, all 13 of the US 17 corridor counties had been or now are members of the organization. And I would say 15, 16 municipalities.
Are still active and still paying dues to the organization
We probably have 20 to 25 altogether,
for 17 only?
pretty close.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, let me, I was put on this board in 2011. And basically 17 goes through my district. And the people in my district have been talking about 17 was supposed to be done 30 years ago. And the true story is, 17 was given up because we wanted to build a bridge. In retrospect, it was probably a good idea to build the bridge. As far as Bridgeton being completed, to the point it is Mills Road, that was so we could move the traffic onto the bridge. But what annoys me, since I've been on this committee for the last 8 years, 9 years, is we talk about Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville is complete. Jacksonville stopped paying their dues of $7,000, $7,500 for the last 2 years. We go to other counties that were paying, Beaufort was paying $25,000, but they've gone down to $20,000. There are some other counties here that stopped paying also. Brunswick County. Jones County contributes $3,000. Pollocksville, $500, and that probably will stop too. The point is that Craven County has, starting from 2006 to 2010, we're putting $36,000 a year into this. That's $180,000. In 2011 to 2012, they reduced it by $5,000 to $30,000. And that was for 1 year. So that gave us $30,000. And then in 2012 to 2018, we're paying $25,000. We reduced it to $25,000, which is $150,000, for a total of $360,000. And then last year, we gave you $12,000 for the first 6 months of the year, from July until December of this year. So far, Craven County has spent $372,500, and we don't have a 17 finished. And, you know, going to Jacksonville, we're certainly helping Jacksonville get employees from Craven County. We're helping the shoppers go down to Craven County. We're really, I don't see that much economic development that would take place as much as it would be on 17 going up to Greenville. So it leaves me with a little bit of a sore tooth that all these counties that get finished drop off. And then we're left paying the bill for all the other counties. You talk about 64. I think probably the highest amount of one of the 64 people are paying, according to the information I have here, is probably somewhere between $200 and $500.
Nash County is paying $14,000.
No, Nash County. And New Bern is paying $12,500. So if you add the $12,500 that New Bern's paying to what Craven County paid, that's even more than the figure of $372,000 that we have already put into this. So we're paying for a lot of counties to get roads, and we're not getting anything. As far as what Commissioner Leiner was talking about, 2026, I could see this going to 2028, because right now we're working with a state budget that's going to be 2 years old. So that's affecting it, as well as the hurricane and the winter storms. And I've got to go back to my constituents and say, that road, in fact, you and I made up a letter with Mayor Kirkland that I hand-delivered to the governor going back 4 years ago, I believe it was, and we've got it pushed up to 220. Now we're going in the other direction again. We're looking at 226, 2028. And it just seems to me that Craven County is getting a raw deal here.
Well, I would answer that in 3 ways. You can look at a $360,000 approximate investment as yielding the direct return of $146.5 million since we stood up the enterprise. So I think that's a pretty good ROI if you just looked at the raw numbers.
Well, based on the information you have given us today, I think that Craven County Commissioners have got to look over all the figures that I have here in front of me, and we have to have a discussion. So I would make a recommendation at this point that we make a motion to hold off on voting on giving this money until the first meeting in January, which would be what date is that, the 6th? 6th of January. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in
Okay,
favor?
I got
Yeah.
a discussion here. You're asking us to take a look of what we've invested so far and what everybody else is paying, and then taking and getting some actual numbers of when we expect. Now, my understanding, legislators are going back in session on the 13th of January, so we still won't have anything there. And then feds are coming out in April with their proposed transportation, so we're looking for funding there. I mean, Chairman, I understand what you're saying, and I'll support it and go with it, but we've put a lot of money into it, and we've probably got less than 1% invested in the total project of what we've got, 1% of what we paid to come into it, which is, I have to go along with Mark's comment of the ROI on that thing coming in. We're in a tough situation. I feel if we don't be involved with that and keep this in the nose of the Department of Transportation and the governor and all of our representatives, we're gonna die on the vine because they're not gonna be kicked in the teeth on it and everything else. Should we be paying the whole thing? That's something this board's gonna have to decide. But we've got a lot invested already in making sure we're out in front of this thing and pushing this thing forward. My concern is, my biggest concern is, if we don't get a budget, this goes to 2026 and 2028, then we know we're dead. If we don't have anything here that's gonna show us, but I'd hate to see us back out or fall on this thing, and then we have no representation, because you know as well as I do, and Commissioner Mitchell as well, sitting on the RPOs and the MPOs, 64 has taken its head of its own, a life of its own, and it seems to be moving ahead of the rest of us. And that's one thing that we gotta make sure that they don't. 17 has still gotta be the top priority, and I can't believe that the state or somebody is losing sight that 17 is the key military avenue to Norfolk. That we've gotta get moving and pushing that out there, and somehow we've gotta get that. You know, I'll shut up and say that. I'll support what you wanna do on that, but
No,
I hope you'll
I
take a
would
look at.
agree with you on some of your points. I'm not saying drop it all together, we should be representative. But at the same token, it is the last part of 17 to be completed. So it's gonna get completed anyway at some point, whether we pay for it or not. But I do agree with you that we still should say active in this. But I just want to make the commissioners aware of the money that we put into this and the other counties that have
Backed out.
backed out.
Yeah.
I'm on Highway 70 corridor. And on Highway 70 corridor, going back, I guess it was 5 years ago, Jack, that I sat down with two other commissioners from Highway 70, and we made up bylaws that each county had to stay in it to the end. And we made that agreement, and that agreement has held. We don't have that agreement in 17. And because of it, we've been shortchanged a little bit here. And that's the only point I'm trying to make, that let's understand what we put into this and where we're going from here. And all I'm asking at this point is that we table this till January 16th, until we all have an understanding and I spend some time with you and show you the figures.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Told you I'd support you.
Mr. Chair, January 6th.
January 6th. I have a motion, a second, and let's have a roll call vote on it, please.
Okay. Commissioner Booker?
Yes.
Commissioner Liner?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones?
Yes.
And Chairman Moore.
Yes, and I'll get back to you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
The sheriff.
Morning.
Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Once again, coming forward to discuss the child enforcement position that we entered into a agreement with Maximus, who kind of oversees the child support portion for the county, working closely with DSS. We recognized we had an issue early on when I first took office. We had an extreme large backlog of child support papers that were not being served adequately. Put a special assignment into place where I put a very aggressive deputy that had an extensive background in child support enforcement, that I was fortunate enough to be able to hire from Pitt County, where that's all he did. And he made a very substantial reduction in the number of papers that were pending and scrubbed the list. Unfortunately, he was only there for 30 days. It was a trial basis to see if something like this, what type of return investment we would get. And unfortunately, that list started to build back up because I did have to put that deputy back on shift where his assignment was. In working with the county manager, the attorneys, DSS, and Maximus, we were finally, after, I don't know, Jack, what, 6, 8 months, something like that, able to come to an agreement I think that everybody could live with. And some time ago, y'all had authorized the county manager, once we all checked off on this thing and everybody felt comfortable with it, that it was in the best interest of our children and the county as a whole, that you authorized the county manager to approve this. So we have signed off on it, and I do believe it had come back before the board at some time. We just needed to, I guess, get it approved and put in the minutes. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Jack?
So back in August, when we addressed this item, when we reviewed what the motion was, we didn't feel it was clear enough for the minutes and for what we're trying to do for the audit. So before you in your packet, you have endorsed the concept, you have endorsed the budget. This is the official, taking the money, place it in the sheriff's budget, what it's gonna cost you to hire that deputy, and then the vehicle and other things that go with it. Remember, this is a program where we spend 100%, but we get 66% of it back. That's the state and federal portion of this. And then, of course, the county's on the hook for 33% roughly. But this is basically an accounting measure to make sure we're compliant, and the minutes reflect what you've done.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, I'd like to emphasize that I think serving child support payments needs to be one of the highest priorities that we have, I will say, inadequately addressed in the past. These monies do not belong to the families, they actually belong to the children with it. And I personally would like to receive a report once a month that says how many new papers have come in from the court system, how many remain, and how many have been served. I think we as a county need to hold ourselves accountable for what we are doing to try to capture these monies for the children. And I know it's difficult. If somebody's trying to avoid being served and paying for their children, they're not going to necessarily be easy to find. But I think it needs to be a priority. Some of the children who are not receiving these monies are also ending up in the DSS system, in the emergency department, or in public housing. This is rent and food money that they need. So I would just like to emphasize that I think it is extraordinarily important, and I'm pleased that we are moving forward to address this issue. Thank you, sir.
Is that a problem for you, Sheriff?
Oh, absolutely not. Myself and Commissioner Mitchell have had quite a few conversations, well, with Jack, and we've also put some special emphasis projects in place, and with this position, it is going to enable me to put this person on there 100% of the time, which is what you need. And I can tell you at some time, we're probably going to need to come back and revisit growing this, because just like the EOMP program, it's one of those that you have to stay on top of, because typically the numbers don't just continuously decrease. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that think it's okay to not take care of their business and look out for their children. So, but my commitment to the commissioner and all of you is that we'll have special emphasis projects that run monthly. This deputy that's being put on there, I would put him up against anybody in the state. He's phenomenal. He's done it before and has already made a noticeable difference in the past 2 weeks since we met.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while the sheriff's here, before he got away quicker, I wanted, with Ms. Stacy here as well, there was Sheriff and I had just a brief conversation while they were talking about the budget amendment for the JCPC money. But I think there's a point, when we talk about raising the age and things like this, and Sheriff mentioned to me the cost of housing juveniles in other places, because we don't have a facility in this county where we can, I guess the best word is an incarcerated juvenile, Sheriff. Would you share with them just what you told me, the cost of that, something we need to?
So now, since it's gone up, like I said, our budget in just the transport, housing, and all that, that comes back on us when we arrest a juvenile in this county. So we're looking at roughly $245 a day to house a juvenile. That's in addition to the transport, that we have to take them either to Wilmington or Greenville if there's a position or a slot open for them. Sometimes we have to take them further away. And that's hard to budget for, but like I said, the numbers we feel like are probably gonna double. So, I'm very glad to see that y'all approve that, because any steps we can take to give these juveniles who have made a mistake an opportunity to right that mistake and not get caught up in this vicious cycle, I certainly support 100%, but from a budget standpoint, it could be devastating to a budget, because we just don't know the numbers right now. It's very early on.
So, over the years, the sheriff, previous sheriffs, we've talked about, and it's sort of it's a double-edged sword, certainly, whether we try to place a juvenile facility here. We did have some light plans, when I say that, LIGHT plans, moving forward when we built the judicial center, that maybe this was a component that could be added. This sheriff and I have talked probably in more detail about that. It'd be nice to see what the numbers look like after a year, but you do have the space. Now, there are issues like staffing and liability that you take on, but on the flip side, we're paying $245 a day to the counties or whoever owns those facilities in Wilmington and Greenville, plus transporting.
What do you think if we had a facility, it would cut that $245 down to?
Well, it could cut it drastically. I mean, you could, well, I don't want to say it publicly, but I mean, you may be close to not doing too bad with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any interest at all, I mean, it would take some time to scope this facility. I'm sure the sheriff and I could look at some numbers and see what other counties may have need for. We're sort of centrally located here, right? Greenville's a little north, Wilmington's obviously south. We may have a little niche in the middle of the east here where we could make an impact. If you're interested, I mean, we could talk and look at what numbers would look like for that. I mean, that's just, I'm throwing it out because we had that discussion this morning.
Vice Chairman Jones?
What is the criteria? I mean, what do you have to offer differently than we offer from the north?
It's got to be completely segregated from the adult population,
I
Sheriff.
mean, they cannot have any interaction with the adults whatsoever. Totally different building. And, you know, there's an educational component also that we have to be able to provide out there. I can tell you that in just conversations that the county manager and I have been having about this as we saw it coming, he asked me to reach out to some of our surrounding sheriffs to possibly get a commitment from them, because they too are arresting and transporting and having to house as well juveniles. And I can tell you, Jones, Carteret, and Pamela Coe have committed that if there was something like this in the future, they would love to commit, do maybe a memorandum of understanding, whatever y'all might require, that they would be sending their juveniles to this location. So, and there would probably be more, because once again, the beds in Greenville fill up and Wilmington, and it's just very limited. And other than that, in this area, there are no other options.
Commissioner Jones, I think on a positive note, we did scale the judicial center in a way that we knew we were going to expand at some point. We were hoping it was a lot longer. But kitchen facilities, laundry facilities, you know, things like professionals we already have on staff could easily be transferable between, you know, the two facilities. And when the sheriff talks about separate, I mean, it's basically just got to have space between the buildings, and you can't use the same space. But I mean, we would envision it being part of the judicial center that we have now. You know, the flow of it.
Yeah, they just can't walk by each other in the hallway or something like that.
Is there a criteria per juvenile, per jailer? I mean, do you have to have more of them to watch over them than you do the normal?
No, sir,
inmate?
the ratio's gonna be about the same.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Mr. Chair, I think this is worth looking at. That's not a commitment to do it, that's a commitment to say, I think it's worth looking at. But I'm obviously only one member of the board. But what I would like to see as part of that discussion is, say, for the past 5 years, the number of our juveniles in this county that we have assisted or looked after, plus, shall we say, the other 3 or 4 counties that you mentioned, so that we had an idea of the population that we were looking at potentially serving. Is it going up? Is it going down? Does it stay steady? And also, on average, the amount that we, this county, and if possible other counties, but at least for this counties, are spending per juvenile, if that makes any sense. So if it's, you know, $245 a day, is the average bill to house one of them $3,000, $5,000? I have no idea what the scope of those numbers are, and it might give us an idea over the monies that we are already spending with it, or might project in the future. And also, if those other counties would agree to an MOU to use such facilities, what we would be looking at in terms of those populations. I like to see metrics.
Commissioner Booth?
Good idea.
You said if Greenville and Wilmington
Yes, sir.
are full, that you may have to go to,
I mean, we could possibly have to go to Raleigh or even further, just depending on where the vacancies are,
okay.
where.
So that would be, Raleigh would be another
could be an
source.
option. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, Jack, to look
Okay.
into that and.
I think
come up with
Commissioner Mitchell has some good
figures.
points. I mean, we need to,
Yeah.
I think it's more of a study to start with. Look at the numbers, look at what the cost would be, work with Jennifer and the JCPC, see how they, you know, if
And
there's
some of
any
those
funding or
numbers
whatever's there.
Jack, some of those numbers came out when we knew raise the age was gonna pass.
Correct.
DPS did a good job of getting us numbers out,
Right.
so we could at least have a rough ballpark figure as to what the budget was, so it wasn't such a slap in the face, if you will.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Booker?
Yes.
Commissioner Liner?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones?
Yes.
Chairman Liner?
Yes.
Excuse me, Chairman Moore.
We look so much alike.
Must be the heads.
Wouldn't be me.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell, you'll start seeing that.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Sheriff.
Thank you.
Ron Antry, Department Matters, Tax Department.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here today to present to you the county's plans to enact the electronic listing of personal property, which the board adopted a resolution back in July to enable. And before, of course, you have copies of the proposed new forms in your packet. But before I discuss those, I thought it would be helpful to give you a brief history of the listing of personal property in Craven County. When I first started here in the 70s, working here in the tax office, taxpayers who owned personal property had to actually appear in person at our office or in one of several locations around the county. There were actually a small army of about 35 people who were appointed as township list takers. They took oaths of office and they took the records out into the townships. And every person who owned any household furniture, clothing, jewelry, anything had to appear there to list it. Well, that meant that just about every adult in Craven County had to show up to list that personal property. The legislature, I think wisely in 1988, exempted household personal property from the listing requirement, and that did a lot to eliminate the numbers of people that had to appear to list. We then implemented a mail listing system. That was the second option that taxpayers had to file their property tax listings, and we began that process in the 80s and 90s. And then in the 80s, we also, the Board of Commissioners then adopted what's called a permanent listing system for all real property, so that real property, houses, land that existed on the tax records were automatically listed, so there was no requirement to sign a listing form for that. So now we have the only people who are required to list personal property are those who own things like mobile homes, boats, airplanes, and of course businesses that have equipment that needs to be listed. So for this year, for the upcoming year, for the first time, due to our changing and improving our software that we've acquired, we have for the first time, have the opportunity to offer yet a third option for taxpayers to list their taxable personal property electronically. And we have that required a redesign of the forms, which I have included in your packet. And we are making plans to begin that service the first day of listing, which is January 2nd. We're working both with our IT staff to create the URL links on our website to allow those taxpayers to file those listings electronically. They don't have to use that service. And in fact, the experience of most counties that have started this service is that it's rather slow getting started. Not many people use that option because they still, some people like to come into the office to list, and most taxpayers, however, use the mail. And so I have included the forms for your review. We've asked that you, although the board has already adopted the resolution to allow for this electronic listing, we would ask that you approve the use of the new forms that we've designed for this purpose. Now, the business personal property form, which goes out to about 4,400 business taxpayers, the state of North Carolina has for many years had created and developed a form that is in use statewide. And this will be our first year, although we're familiar with the form because many taxpayers out of state file that form. This will be the first time we have adopted its use as the form we use in the office. And so we think this is an improvement in the service that we provide to the taxpayers. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have about the new process.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one comment?
Yeah.
Before you get into questions? I know I say it sound like a broken record at times, but this is part of the modernization that we looked at when we were implementing the new software. Part of it was the tax software, which is ongoing now. Second part was the finance software. We're trying to modernize and do more things online, more electronic things that our citizens have been asking for years. This is a process. When we started looking at these things 6-8 years ago, and we're just now getting when we have these programs in place. So just want to make you aware, this was one of the investments you made.
Okay. Let me get a motion first.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Now discussion. Any discussion? I received a form, it had nothing to do with these, I don't believe, but because of moving into a new home, you sent me a form asking me the price that I paid, whether it was farm or residential and so forth. Is that going out to a great number of people?
Well, we send one of those questionnaires out to each taxpayer who acquires real property during the year. It's called a sales confirmation letter, and we use that to build a sales file to help with the reappraisal of the property.
Okay. You're not gonna raise my taxes now, right?
No, not, no, sir.
Not until January.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody doesn't know it. Mr. Autry will receive an award this afternoon.
That's true.
He is probably the oldest employee in Craven County. 45
He
years.
just
with-
meant
with-
years.
Years, not in age, years with the county.
I don't know if
Years
I want
with the
that
county.
award.
Years with the county,
Commissioner
45
Liner,
years.
we call it the most well-tenured.
Well tenured, there you go. That's to be commended. It really is.
Okay. Now we're gonna hear from the Health Department Hospice, Clayton Gaskins and Jennifer Blackman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
You all have in your packets a budget amendment that we've provided for you in the amount of $213,968. And I've got a few points I'll go over to kind of bring us to where we're at and why that amount is being requested. When I came 10 months ago as the hospice director, our census was fluctuating, I would say, between 32 and 38. We hit 44 one time in April of last year, of this year, excuse me. And since then, we've continued to grow. Back in October of this year, we had a monthly average daily census of 40. In November, we had an average daily census of 48. So our census is growing quite a bit. We have 5 full-time nurses. We're trying to keep a caseload for them of 8 to 10 patients each. We don't want to compromise our quality of care that we're providing. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the profits that we're making. So we've estimated for the first 5 months of this fiscal year to be around $150,000 profit for first 5 months. Last fiscal year, for the entire 12 months, our profits were around $195,000. So if we stay on the same path of where we're going now, we'll be over $300,000 profit by the end of the fiscal year in June. One of the things that we provide that our competitors do not provide is respite care. Respite care is not traditionally covered by insurances, but our Health Department Foundation generously helps us financially to do that. And what that is, we use our CNA staff to provide 2 days a week, a 3-hour block of time for a caregiver or family member to get out, to go to an appointment, to go shopping, or just to get out and take a breath. With the increase in census that we've had, obviously the patients and their ADLs, assisting with personal care, is the priority for those CNAs. So we don't want to lose the ability of being able to provide respite care, because that's something that we feel is important, but it also sets us aside or apart from other hospice agencies here in town. And then lastly, I don't want us to get in a predicament where we're not able to take a referral. Word of mouth is our strongest advertisement here in town, the small community that we have, and we just don't want to be able to, or to be in a position of having to turn away a referral. But I don't want to compromise the care that my nurses are providing because of high caseloads. And then the last thing I'll mention is we are trying to look at how we're covering call. For example, for the weekend, I've got a nurse that goes on call Saturday morning, 8 a.m., and she stays on call until 8 a.m. on Monday. Right now, we have a current census of 51. Our budget that we're operating in is based on a census of 30 to 35, which is why we're running out of money in these lines. So, but the call can be extremely rough. That one nurse over the weekend has responsibility for 51 patients, and she gets call after call after call. We do have Diane Bratson, my nurse supervisor, is the backup, and she goes out a lot on weekends to help that primary nurse that's on call. So having another part of this budget amendment is asking for a nurse and a CNA to be hired contract. So having that other nurse on staff would add one more nurse in the mix of call, which would lighten the burden a little bit. But we're still trying to look at how we're sharing call and looking at the possibility of doing 12-hour shifts to lighten that 24-hour load. So.
Okay, have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Yes.
I just want to make sure the public understands as well, that everybody here, that this is not coming out of the general reserve fund. This is coming out of their own budget and the money that they make. This is federal Medicaid and Medicare money. It's not county taxpayer dollars. Clayton, wasn't that bad, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Commissioner?
Yeah, at the board meeting this week, one of the discussions, Jack, was that because of the vehicle shortage, for lack of a better word, we're paying mileage. And I don't know where the break is, where we purchase vehicles versus pay mileage, but I think we need to look at that because, excuse me, it would appear to me that we're in better shape if we provide a vehicle than we are if we're paying, what is it, 60? Do you know, Jennifer?
58 and a half.
Yeah, so, that's pretty healthy. And, so anyway, that was one point I wanted to make.
And we are using all of the cars we have. We have a new car on the way, it should be any time now. But we're planning to request some additional cars in the upcoming budget year.
they've got, a number of the cars they use are the old sheriff cars, which, by the time they get them, they're not exactly pristine, so.
We're so appreciative.
That would be,
The old Chargers.
that would be generous to say that. And the other thing, I just want to reiterate, this 51 people, to have one nurse responsible for 2 full days and nights to be on call, to go to those calls, to be able to respond and respond quickly, that's just
amazing.
unreasonable,
Yeah.
any way you want to slice it, so.
And it's very unpredictable. We have no way of knowing. We could have a quiet evening. They've told me not to use that word. But it could be the exact opposite. One of our nurses, a couple weeks ago, was out until 4:30 in the morning. And she texted me, she says, "I'm not safe to drive. I'll be in after lunch today," and that was fine.
Yeah. So anyway, as a final point, as a, someone who had a family member who, for lack of a better word, took advantage of this service, I think it's a great, great service that we need to really make sure that they're positioned to do their job, do it well, and do it safely. So that's just my comment.
And
Vice
we're
Chairman
happy to be
Jones?
growing without a marketing director. We're doing what we're doing on our own without that. So.
I just want to state, our families just utilized Craven County Hospice, and they did a phenomenal job. As Commissioner Booker just stated about his experience with a loved one. You know, we were at a time where I didn't know what to do, and we wanted to keep our loved one home to die home. And they provided that phenomenal care. And I use that word again because that's what it was. These ladies went above and beyond the call of duty. And one particular night, it was a Saturday night about 9 o'clock, and I didn't know what to do, and I called them, and they were there within 30 minutes. So I have firsthand experience, and so I just want to publicly thank y'all for what you did on behalf of our family. And I believe in our hospice service that we give to the citizens of this county, and I commend you for the job you're doing and your staff.
Yeah, I would second that. Having lived in Fairfield Harbor with a lot of senior citizens, everybody is very, very satisfactory about what hospice has done there. So we commend you on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just one final comment, talking about the on-call nurses. I'm going to allege that the number of people using this service is going to continue to grow. We are a retirement community. Our population is aging. Having been in the situation of having 2 family members seriously ill at the same time, you burn out very quickly, and I would strongly urge you to start looking at some system other than being on call for 40 straight hours, because yes, there is the health and welfare of the contract employee, but there is also the degradation of the care to the family and the individual that will result when somebody's been going at full bore for 36 hours. They're not at their best game.
We've
So-
looked at seeing what the possibility of having a person that is on call, that would be their position, and on call for us at nights and weekends. So we're going to try to look at that as we're working on our new budget.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, the other point that they may have made, but maybe I missed it, that we're looking at a contract employee here.
Right.
In the event that this thing starts declining, we're not committed to a full-time employee. So I think that's good.
We will be putting these 2 positions in our new budget request year for the upcoming budget year, but this will give us some time, 6 months, to look at what the growth, if it continues or not.
It stays there.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion, a second, a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Booker?
Yes.
Commissioner Liner?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones?
Yes.
And Chairman Mark?
Yes, thank you very much.
See you walk out of here. Thank you. Jennifer, y'all have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, next is Mark Dale and Alden Harris for Department Emergency Service Realms Volunteer Fire Department.
I'm Mark Dale. Mr. Harris could not be here this morning because of work.
Okay.
What we are asking for the commissioner's approval on is to incur a loan of approximately $151,351.59 to replace some equipment that has become outdated and very unreliable. The main part of this is to replace our brush truck, which we use to fight brush fires, use off-road whenever we need to rescue someone out of woods or swampland or anything like that. And we are purchasing this vehicle through state contract, which we have determined will save us about $10,000. We're also looking at purchasing what's called a skid unit, which is a brush truck apparatus that fits on that truck, a water tank and pump to allow it to put out brush fires. And of course, the associated radios and things that we need to turn it into an emergency vehicle. We're also looking at the purchase of 12 air packs, self-contained breathing apparatus, which a lot of the ones we have are outdated to the point where they're no longer certifiable by the National Fire Protection Association and by the National Fire Academy.
How many years are they good for?
Generally, they're recommended about 8 to 10 years max, and some of ours are 20 to 25 years old. So we're looking at replacing a large group of 12 of them, and they are unfortunately rather expensive. This loan, the principal, or rather the monthly payment of $4,442 is well within our budget. We have in the past year been fortunate enough to pay off the loan on our building and to pay off one of our fire trucks. So we only have one fire truck left that we are making monthly payments on, and that will be paid off in August of 2020. So we feel we've gotten a good interest rate through BB&T as a commercial entity, and we just seek your permission to apply for we've already applied for the loan, rather to commit to the loan. It will not require any additional funding from the county or the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second, discussion? No discussion? Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Next is appointments, pending, current, upcoming. Appointments should be effective immediately and otherwise less specified. First one we have is the Adult Home Advisory Committee. We have set up an appointment for Commissioner Mitchell, myself, and the county manager to go see the director. Nursing Home Advisory Committee, there's 3 vacancies. I think we have a Norma Mora who seeks reappointment.
Make that motion.
Okay. She will be reappointed. Local Emergency Planning Service, LEPC, Jacqueline Taylor seeks appointment, District 7.
I move that she be appointed.
Okay. Craven Health Board, Cy Seymour has maxed out his term of service. Applicant Eddie Gaines seeks appointment. See application shown on attachment 9B. And Kenneth Holton seeks reappointment.
I'll make that motion.
Just make both those.
Yes.
Fire Tax Commissioner, Jimmy Smith, Jason Simpson, I believe that's Theron's, McCabe's district, or is that your district?
I would move, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Simpson be appointed.
Okay. Reappointed. Coastal Carolina Regional Airport Authority. We have 5 applications on file. However, that has always had a commissioner on there, and I would look for somebody to make a motion to.
I'll make a motion, we nominate Jason Jones to sit on that board.
All right.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Craven Aging Planning Board.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Jeff Futrell to sit on there for the Veteran Services Council for that vacant seat, and I'd like to hold the other seat until the second meeting in January, if possible.
Okay, well, so we'll table that till the second week of January. Recreation Advisory Council, District 5 needs an appointment to fill Kathy Fraser's position. That's.
Mr. Chairman, I'm working with Commissioner McCabe, and he's got a couple names, but he's not ready to submit one at this time.
Okay. Upcoming appointments, terms expiring in January, Emergency Medical Service Advisory Council, Craven Child Protection Team, Havelock Craven Library Board.
I have a question. Madam Clerk, the Havelock Craven County Library Board, was that the reappointment of Commissioner McCabe? Or is there another one coming up?
There's another one coming up. I'd have to find it here.
If you wouldn't mind sending that out,
Okay, I'll do that.
thank you.
And the JCPC Board. Okay. County Attorney's Report.
Mr. Chairman, only item this morning, if I may handle it from here, is to wish you and the rest of the board, and management team, and everyone else associated with the county a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Thank you very much. Same to you. County Manager.
Morning.
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 I always like to come up at the last meeting. This is the end of the calendar year. This is it for 2019. Last time we'll be together. I think we've had a great year. There's been a lot of progress. Someone noted earlier, Chairman Mark, when you were referring about Chairman Liner's previous service. It's been a busy year, and there's a lot of things that are still moving that'll carry on into 2020. With that, I thought I'd give you a quick update to sort of wrap the year up on where we are on certain projects. Right now, the convention center is back open, and many of you have attended events there. I think it looks great. We're getting positive feedback. We do have Phase 2, which is coming, starting in January, February timeframe, and it'll run through September of 2020. What that'll do will allow us to finish the work in the ballroom that we couldn't do before we reopened. It'll also be the enhancements in the back of the facility that many of you have seen. We've briefed you on. I think it's going to be a great product when it's done, and we're excited to have it done. On Friday, Mr. Hodges and myself, along with other team members, met on a variety of different projects, one being work on our water system. 2 projects we have ongoing there. One is the replacement of the booster pump station at Lawson Creek Park. We've hired an engineer. We're in the design and permitting phase. We're working with the city of New Bern as it's on their property at Lawson Creek Park, and it seems to be moving along just fine. We may have some alternative locations for different types of system that may avoid the problems we had this time, some mitigation aspects, which would require maybe using some county land on the Township 7 side, Commissioner Booker, near Brinson School, for some of those work. Second part of that project is the telemetry system. It's how the whole system talks. It's the tanks talking to the wells talking to the tanks, and then being able to tie back into our system at the water plant. We had our kickoff meeting on Friday. It went very well. The engineer is McKim & Creed, who built the telemetry system that we just finished with the water plant. We want to make sure that everything is cohesive together, so we have one system that talks to every piece, and when we're done, we've got a great product. We're looking at about 18 months on that project. We're going to put a temporary measure in place while we design, permit, and build the new system. Most of it, the expense in the project, is putting fiber to the different sites that we don't have. When I say sites, water towers and wells. Lastly, we finished up the week last week talking about the courthouse project, which is a big project. And that is putting the building back together in a manner that was consistent with how it was before, but also looking at things and growth in the court system and how we can make that building more adaptable to their needs. I will tell you, Commissioner Booker brought up a point when we interviewed. I hadn't thought about it, I got to be honest. Should we just tear the thing down? And I got to be honest, we're probably going to look at that option as A, and then a B and a C. The numbers are going to come back quite large. I'm just going to go ahead and warn you. Just a putback number, Gene, I believe was 4.9 million That's just putting it back like it was. Because what happens, and this is the more frustrating thing, you had a great building, right? You used it, it met our needs, it gets destroyed, you want to put it back just like that, you can't, because you have code upgrades and standards that have changed since we built it. And that adds a huge burden on the project. When we start talking about not only putting it back, but making the enhancements and the adaptability and things that Stanley would need if he stayed, or the court would need, I mean, you could be talking upwards of 10 million. I mean, it's just hard to say at this point until we dig in a little bit more. So your point about should we just tear it down, I don't know that it might not be the best idea at some point. So as we move forward, I want you to at least have an open mind when we think about it. My biggest fear, and I've shared this with you about any redevelopment of that site, is the lack of parking that goes along with it. Many of you are aware we already have a challenge with parking. If you want to add things in here, we've got to figure out a way to add parking. So that's going to be the one thing on a redevelopment, is how do you make that work? Quite frankly, it's a problem now, even if we put it back like it was. But in that event, we wouldn't be adding any new people. And again, there's other projects, small, Parks and Rec building we've kicked off. That should be on going to bid soon. Lots of other things out there. It's been a fantastic year. I've enjoyed working with the new board. I think we've made a lot of progress. I think there's a lot of things we still have to do, and there's a lot of work to be done from Hurricane Florence and other things, like modernization you did this morning, making things more accessible to the citizens. I'm excited about another year. I know you guys are, so we look forward to that. I'll end with two things. Commissioner Liner stole, and I believe he's still here, but I'm so proud of Ronnie Antry and 45 years of service to our county. That's remarkable. If he stays 50, I guess he gets a portrait like that, because that guy stayed 50. So we'll see, Ronnie. Oh, we're talking. We're still talking. We're still negotiating. But
We could put it right next to it, too.
that's right. But we do have a lot of employees, whether it be 5 years of service or 45 years of service, that have dedicated a lot of their life to this county, and I'm proud of each and every one of them. And I hope you'll be able to attend today at 2. And lastly, Merry Christmas, and I hope you enjoy time with your family, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, commissioners' reports. Commissioner Booker.
Just one thing. This past week, I guess, time flies, maybe it was the week before, we had the folks from Raleigh, from the Department of Mines, came to Craven County for a public hearing. We had a spirited discussion with probably 20 or more residents from the Bryce's Creek area that are going to be either directly or indirectly affected by this sand mine that's been proposed. And the big concerns of the public were noise, dust in the air, road traffic. I think those were the three things that came up again and again and again. And the bottom line is that the mining commission, that's the proper term, those three things don't really get on their radar. They're not really concerned about that. People brought up pollution and maybe their wells are gonna be affected, but because some of these people at least have private wells apparently. I think most of them are on county water. At any rate, they didn't make a decision, obviously. The people have till, I think, the 20th to do a written complaint, if you want to call it a complaint, or proposed to the mining group. I'm about 99% sure that mine will be approved, and the appeal by a number of the people, several of the people, I should say, was we need zoning in this county that might prevent this from happening to some other neighborhood. The reality of it is that this mine will be immediately backed up to a housing development that's really new. The people, they built their homes, bought the homes. There's this beautiful farm behind them. Well, now there's going to be a mine. And so, their comment to me and at the microphone was, hey, it's time for this county to get zoning. So I just mentioned that. That was an appeal that came out from a number of people. Anyway, that's all I have.
I can appreciate it because I have a mine on my, in my district and surrounding people too. Mr. Mitchell?
First, I'd like to echo Commissioner Booker's comments about it being time to look at the need for zoning in this county. I've been hearing it in the 10 years since I moved here, and I think it's time we at least take a close look at its feasibility. So thank you for bringing that one up. Just a couple of things. I'd like to thank Cherry Point and the Wing for some great holiday celebrations, both the community open house and the Wing band concert on Friday that was open to the public. It was an outstanding Christmas celebration. Thank everyone in the community who came to the Wreaths Across America celebration on the 14th to both commemorate our veterans who have been laid to rest and to educate our young people. Thank you for everyone who's participated in the Toys for Tots program throughout this community to help children who are not necessarily set up to enjoy a happy Christmas. We've made a big difference in their lives. And finally, let's please keep our emergency responders and our active duty men and women who serve in the armed forces in our thoughts and prayers over the holiday season. And thank you, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Okay, Commissioner Liner?
I have to piggyback because we was at the same functions. So, on that. It was good. If you missed out on those, you missed some great functions and some great times. The Sergeant Major at the station has changed over. Sergeant Major Robertson is the new Sergeant Major down there. Sergeant Major McInerney is on terminal leave, will be retiring here in March, moving forward on that. I will be at Thursday, I will be at the Havelock High School. They put on a seniors breakfast. I will be attending that. And Sheriff, if I may steal your thunder for Thursday morning, if that's all right, to make that announcement. I will also be attending the Sheriff's meeting with the deputies for all the residents in Havelock who's down there, who wants to meet at Dunkin' Donuts and meet your deputies. Please come out. I will attend that until I have to go over to the high school for that. Other than that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's, and please, please be safe and be watchful of others. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got several items that I'd like to bring before the board for discussion. And this first item, after I present it to the board, I would ask the county manager to chime in. And several months ago, I began having some discussions with Rescue 34, which is the Fort Balmer Rescue Squad. As you know, the Fort Balmer area, they service a population that is mainly Medicaid or Medicare. They do not have a lot of your private insurance companies. As a result, their expenditures are outweighing their revenues. They have had a good fund balance over the year, but due to the revamping of a squad this past year, they didn't buy a new one, they just rebuilt, used the same chassis, the same box, and just had a new motor and so forth, new chassis put. But they depleted right much of their fund balance. So they're getting down to a point financially that they're concerned and going forward for the next few months. County manager and Stanley Kite, myself, and several others met with their leadership 2 months ago probably, and staff outlined some cost savings that they saw that they recommended to Fort Balmer Rescue Squad. And so Rescue Squad went back and they did enact one of those cost-saving measures. As a result, they did it in good faith, and so that was one of the discussions. You know, if they could go forth and try to accommodate and showing us that they were going to be, I'm not saying they're not frugal, but more frugal with the finances of the taxpayers' money, then that we would come back and try to discuss with this board some options going forward. Do y'all have a slide? I think you've got one that shows their current balance on hand. And I'm gonna just turn it over to you, Jack, if you will, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right.
Yes, sir, thank you. I may have to get Craig to help me a little bit too, Commissioner Jones. Let me just talk broadly about this. So when we met, obviously, there's things that drive the stability of an EMS squad. One of them is, the most important is the amount of money they can bring in. And typically, there's two different types of squad in the county that we talk about in budget. There's the type of squad that has great insurance quality, that pays a lot of money, and they do pretty well. And then there's the ones that have the other side of the insurance that don't pay well, and they struggle. And Fort Barnwell is one of those places. The other thing you have to realize is that they cover geographically a large area, but population and call volume's not there. But every citizen deserves the same response, right? So you have to be careful as you balance these things out. Sometimes it would seem that it would be the opposite of what you would think, that a smaller thing would be cheaper. It's actually not. It's actually more expensive per call. Fort Barnwell also has, just like every squad, there we go. Just like every squad in our county, they're struggling with staffing issues right now. The cost for paramedics is going up, their availability is going down. Everybody's at a paid staff level now. Volunteerism, surprisingly at Fort Barnwell, is good, but it's dwindling. And it's a national trend. I just read an article about it a couple months ago when we were talking about this, Commissioner Jones, that we're seeing this in fire and rescue across the United States. Big cities, small towns, some places don't even have the organization anymore. I mean, no one's willing to even serve on the board. So when you look at what they're doing, and this was on November 30th, I think this was the most recent one we got, Craig, is that correct? You can kind of see what they have on their books here. It's not a lot. They were at 120,000, I think, their last audit. But as Commissioner Jones said, they've had some work that simply had to be done. When we met with them, we noticed some things when we look at liabilities. Basically trying to cut costs to a point where, they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing, not suggesting that they were, but we found some efficiencies, we thought. And I think they've taken advantage, as Commissioner Jones noted, of some of those points that we made. But at the end of the day, I can go through this and point things out to you, but at the end of the day, this is still the most cost-effective statement. And I don't know that you set a number yet or what you were looking for, Commissioner Jones. But I think any subsidy that you provide to keep this group afloat and providing the service they're doing is a benefit of this county. Because the other end, no matter what number he suggests here today, is going to be 10 times higher. I mean, that's it. And we've talked about these issues with some of the other areas in the county. This isn't the last one you're going to see. This system's going to change over time. I think and Commissioner Jones and I hadn't necessarily had this comment, but there's going to have to be more discussion with Fort Barnwell after this decision and moving toward the next budget of how we move forward. And I think I don't want something to be misinterpreted, so I put it on the record because I don't think he should, but there were some suggestions that in our meeting that the county may have felt like this squad didn't need to be there. And it's quite frankly the exact opposite. We know they need to be there. We believe in community medicine. I mean, that's the best way to serve your populations in your community. So that message getting out that maybe the county wanted to shut Fort Barnwell down, it's furthest from the truth. And I just want that for the record. But I'll be happy if you have questions to go through anything. But at the end of the day, they need $15,000 roughly to make it through to the end of the year.
And that, Mr. Chairman, that was going to be my request. I didn't know if the board wanted to take it up today or you wanted to take it up at the next meeting, but that is what I'd like to ask.
You making a motion?
I will make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Booker?
Yes.
Commissioner Liner?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones?
Yes.
And Chairman Martin?
Yes.
And just two more things, Mr. Chairman. I just want, on behalf of our family, to thank all of our citizens for their outpouring of support and the loss of my grandfather, especially to my colleagues. All of you just came and surrounded us with your love and your concern, and I thank you for that during our difficult time. Also, and the last thing I would just say is on behalf of Jennifer, Emily, and myself, we wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. To all of our citizens, thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve you, and we look forward to a 2020 of a great and prosperous year. Thank you.
I would like to thank Jeff Wood for standing in for me at the military person of the quarter. Also, I attended a meeting with county manager, Craven County School Justice Partnership, which they approved the bylaws, and I guess we'll hear more about that at a later time. Actually, I sat in on a meeting in Kaswama.
Yes.
And maybe you'd like to mention the good news that Kaswama had as far as the extra money they made this year.
Well,
I think it was 10 million, wasn't it?
well, we had a significant increase in our revenues. It's bad with Hurricane Florence and what happened, but never in the existence of Kasama have we had a profitable year as we have had this past year. As a result of that, you know, definitely there are more expenses in personnel and more expenses of utilizing your equipment. But it has been a very good year, and we appreciate the leadership that we have at Kasama. We've got a great leader there. He does a fantastic job, and his staff. And we've got some employees there that's been there since the Kasama was formed back in 1993. They're going to be leaving soon, and so we are starting to bring in some new individuals to try to learn what's going on. But I see a great future for Kasama. We've got plenty of space there for a number of years, and I thank the chairman and county manager for being present there at our last meeting, and think they're heading in the right direction, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I too would like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I also would like to thank the staff for the work they've done this past year, and wish them also a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I think that it'd be a good idea, Jack, if we called Johnny Sampson's house just to find out if he's okay.
I can, well, he had a family member who had a medical emergency
Oh,
this
okay.
morning.
All
So,
right.
yes,
Okay.
he
I
did
didn't
call.
know that.
It's
Okay.
right when the meeting started,
All right.
yes, sir.
All right. Do I hear adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.